Okay, so the panel portion of the evening, my personal favorite. Is this cutting out? Am I good? I'm good, all right, thanks. So the secret to making this event work is that we just kind of invite the most interesting people we know who are like sick of talking to us otherwise. And this panel is no different. So I'm very excited to be here with Janice, who's a multiple-time founder and also just general industry veteran who understands a lot about the space, the problems that exist in travel and interesting ways to solve them. And Francois, who's relatively new to the travel space, but has really quickly grown Enzo Connect to be a widely used tool in the short-term rental space. So what we're going to talk about is basically we've had a good overview from Stu and Dan about interesting, the state of the travel market, interesting trends going on. What I wanted this panel to be was basically three entrepreneurial people talking about interesting opportunities in the space so that, tech-oriented, scrappy people in the audience can walk away with this thinking, yeah, I could do this. Which won't last long, but could be very fruitful. Yeah.
We'll beat that out of you.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we'll start out talking a bit about the problems, then we'll talk a little bit about interesting new tech and how to solve those problems. But first question is, what is your favorite problem in the industry that will be solved? We'll start with you, Francois.
Can you guys hear me? Perfect, yeah. So I would say fragmentation is one of the biggest problems in the travel space. I'm going to focus it a bit more on vacation rentals and hospitality because that's the space I'm more familiar with. There are 170, in the vacation rental only, there's 170 all-in-one solutions, okay? And they don't really do everything in one. So there's another 5,000 marketplace partners that do point-based solutions for those all-in-one. So there's a huge demand for digitalization, if that's the right word, and a lot of softwares have gone up there and said to venture capitals, we're going to build a platform that's going to do everything. A famous example, I think, from the Skift conference is Hopper going in with the sort of, we're going to be everything. We're going to do Airbnb. We're going to do travel. We're going to do airlines, etc. I tried to find a place on Hopper in a few places, and there was like 5 places I could book, I think, like 5 unique locations. And so the concept of an all-in-one is not necessarily the solution to the fragmentation, but rather connectivity between different partners and connecting all of these dots together, whether you're a point-based solution or an all-in-one. It's figuring out how can we bridge these gaps together, and that means stronger API connections, more simplified ways of partnering, less demanding rev shares. That's just more of a personal bias on my margins, but and just finding an easier way to partner with different startups as well as bigger organizations. Give you an example. I started Enzo Connect in 2019. It was a school project. I was coming to these events religiously. And one day we wanted to connect to Airbnb to be able to, pull listing information and so on. And we found an API key on Reddit, and it worked. And we were like, fuck yeah. So we got our first units through that. And then 2 weeks later, it didn't work. So someone in the security team, I guess, figured out that this API key was out there. So put a suit. Went to the Airbnb office, knocked on the door, was like, hey, what's up? This random startup, I need access to your API. They were like, who are you? Well, they didn't give it to me. 2.5, 3 years later, and we finally managed to partner officially with Airbnb. And those are kind of the challenges to getting into the space, is that connectivity and that hyper-fragmentation. I'll start with that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's money to be made in the travel space. There are a lot of people chasing after it. I think you're totally right. Neat thing about travel is that it's so broad. There's so much going on, but connectivity is a big opportunity. Janice, what's your pet problem in the travel industry?
The one that I don't see a lot of startups solving is a couple of trends, and Stu highlighted this in part. The labor market is tightening, and it is going to continue to get tighter. And I'm not just talking about the people we all get to hire, which is developers, that's very hard. I'm talking about the concierge. I'm talking about the housekeeper, the nice person who brings you your room service. And those people at a highly skilled level, let's think the Four Seasons, the Ritz down the street, even your Marriott Bonvoys, right? I'm not discriminatory. That labor market is tightening. And I don't see enough of you good people, because I'm in recovery as a founder, solving that problem, right? That luxury travel, we keep hearing that there's headwinds on luxury travel. They're going to expect the same level of service, and the folks at Four Seasons want to give them that same level. They want that MPS, but they cannot find enough housekeepers. They cannot find enough people to tell me when I rock up at the Four Seasons Sicily where to get a Vespa, right? And help me get the Vespa and help me get a helmet and not crash over like Jennifer Coolidge, right? So they want to do that, and there's a gap. There's a delta. It's probably a hardware and software play, right? But there's not enough building there, and they will pay for the privilege. So if you are not focused on how you can help, and it's accommodation, it's hotel, across our whole sector, airlines are going to start to feel this. They're just not admitting it yet. The labor market is tightening, and if you can help the big players who are the big hirers, airlines, hotels largely, theme parks, cruise ships, solve this problem, you could write checks. Investors, I promise you, will want to talk to you.
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you mine. My favorite pet problem in the industry, like a cool thing about the travel industry is the amount of cash that runs through it. Like Stuart went over this in his presentation. You know, there are businesses in this industry making $11 million on $5 billion in sales. There's a lot of cash that runs through. The tough thing about that is that customer acquisition is extremely difficult. It's very expensive. There's lots of money to be made in the space, and so acquisition costs are very high. You know, I'm sure someone in this room was pitched like a travel booking or discovery tool today. Those are extremely difficult to grow because they're unbelievably expensive. We've seen
Max, don't do it.
how big the graveyard is of social travel planning applications. It's very difficult to get people onto these tools. So that's, I don't think, very solvable. But go ahead.
Max is being very diplomatic, so let me take the other side. If you come up to one of us, and I actually have a rule not to dunk on any founder's idea except for a travel planning app. I'm serious. Stu did not pay me to say this. And so if you are sitting there and thinking, but Janice, you don't know mine, God bless you. What you look like, so I'm going to say this so you can spread the gospel. And we've all done it, so you're not alone. When you pitch a travel planning app, to someone in our industry who's more seasoned and been around and seen all the bad things that Stu talked about, you appear to be ignorant about the Mount Pleasant-sized graveyard of apps in that space who are run by people far smarter than certainly me, and very big apps like Concur didn't make it work with lots and lots of money in the bank. And so just be TripAdvisor, people with lots of money and can hire anyone in the world. So when you come to someone in the industry and you say, I have a trip planning app, and then my face starts to do that, it's not because I don't think you could be the one, because there will be one, and I will happily be wrong, but the odds are very much against you. And so please don't pitch us a trip planning app. Thank you.
All right. Now that we're done dunking on trip planning apps, let's start talking about some interesting, like it could be new technology, but just interesting to solutions generally. I think the macro thread, especially of like the two problems that you two chose, is there's just an amazing amount of different stuff going on in the space, different types of products to buy, different types of buyers. It's like travel's inherently global. It's one of the really nice things about the space. What are like the interesting technologies that you two see solving this problem of just loads and loads of stuff? Janice?
So there's a couple things. I think the era of, I'll call it big L loyalty, so me and my Aeroplan, you with your Avion, whatever your loyalty is, I think that might be actually coming to an end. It's been like every 5 years a headline gets written that it's coming to an end. I actually think we're in the next 20 years going to see a evolution of that a little bit. There's some, and the reason my bet is there, and I can see Stu shaking, so don't Don't get mad, Stu. My bet is this, and so I think there's some interesting trends insofar as I think customers, and I put myself in this bucket, we want one wallet. And so by one wallet, I mean I'm done with 400 cards, and I've been guilty of the loyalty chase as well. And so I think there's a prevailing customer trend, and if anyone's going to build this, I think if this works, it's Airbnb. And so if anyone builds this well, I should say, because it's been done not so well, I think Airbnb has the right customer positioning, the right wedge. But I do think the era of being the customer generation of being tied to Aeroplan, and I'm certainly guilty of this, right? Traveling on Air Canada, even when there's a better route elsewhere. I think that might be coming to an end in this generation. So it's not a 5 years thing. If you're anticipating that, please don't go on my word. But I do think there's some converging trends that I think are happening.
That's really interesting. So loyalty tied to like a profile that makes sense because it's on a platform somewhere and not just a product that you're buying. Is that right? Got it. That's interesting. Stu's still shaking his head. We'll go to the bar afterward, everybody. This will be good. Francois.
So 2 things I would say. First, the concept of micro brands. And by that I mean, I know this wasn't in our notes for our prep call or anything, but may as well just wing it, right? So micro brands, the idea of booking an experience, right? We kind of heard that from Travel Trends, Dan, right? And learning about people wanting to book these yoga trips and going with their friends and so on. So I don't know how it's going to affect necessarily direct bookings. I think OTAs still have a massive chunk of the market on that front. But you start seeing players like Google get into the space with the OTAs and introducing it more as book directly with the operator. I mean, right now it's still pointing to the channel managers and so on as the link, not really the brand. There's some work to be done there. But the concept of micro brands is something I think will drive the industry forward. But the bigger part, I would say, in terms of opportunity is staying away a bit from the consumer and focusing a bit more on, I go back to this fragmentation thing because I deal with it every day, focusing on businesses to then touch the consumer. So when we first started, we started as we're going to save time for vacation rental managers, and we quickly changed to we're going to make them more money. And in order to make them more money, because it's so much easier to sell money than it is to sell time, because most people don't even know how to quantify their time. So if you can sell money and you can say, well, look, for every $1 that a guest spends with you, I'm going to make $7 extra. They're like, wait, what? How? You're never going to be able to do this. And then you prove them wrong. That's how you start creating that sort of viral effect. And that's by going to the businesses, not the consumers directly.
So this is a very interesting point, and you didn't bring it up in our prep call. But so what you're saying is we're talking about travel being super fragmented. What's a solution going to be to this? And you're saying no solution, lean into it, add new, smaller, leaner things that you're able to roll into distributors that need those leaner, lower cost things. Because you're going to have a pathway to market because you won't have to pay that acquisition cost. 100%. You're going to save the distributor money.
100%. I'll give you an example. There was a company out of Vancouver. I won't name them because I don't want to be an asshole, but they're a direct competitor of ours out of Vancouver. And they were focused on smart devices for the hospitality space. We went in to partner with them as a micro startup with our first 10 customers. And they said, this is how they started the partnership agreement. They said, we'll be here and you'll be there. I was like, well, that's not really how I was thinking about this partnership. And then a few months later, I get on this podcast, and I discover this company out of Y Combinator that does API for IoT. And I'm like, wait, I can just connect to them, and suddenly I have all of the IoT connectivity I need without having to go through this very formal process with this tougher company. Well, guess what? Now, every company in my space that did partner with that original big player is now using the new company to white label their service and offer the same type of connectivity. This is where even if you're small, you're niche, you're focused, if you create a more B2B type approach through these APIs, you will get distribution so much faster than if you go to the consumers.
So, Janice, you've been in travel for a while. What was your hot take on this lean into fragmentation idea?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be all things to all people unless you have a war chest. And I mean that quite literally in this current climate. And so where can you kill it and get quickly, right? We're travel, you are travel startups. You don't have the luxury of having a headline, likely, that says pre-revenue startup raises 10 million. If you do, I'd like to come work for you. Please talk to me after. Most of you need to put numbers in the bank account for a couple years, spoiler alert, before investors will meaningfully look at your business. And so you need to go fast, right? If you believe those two things, then you have to go fast. And going fast means not building 12 features, means building 2, getting people to pay for them, and then building 3 and 4 if they want to pay for them. And that, what I just described, is something I've failed at in some of my businesses, because that takes a high degree of rigor and not chasing shiny things. In travel, we are guilty of chasing all the shiny things because they come with beautiful pictures and reels and all the things. So it takes rigor to do that.
So this is a really good segue. Okay, so if you're sitting in the audience and you're like, I'm a product person, I'd love to do something in travel. You got enough ideas now. So write some of these down and start working on them. The other thing I wanted to talk about was sitting here as people who have operated startups before, looking at the new technology that's available. How are you two thinking about for you starting your next company today? How would you do things differently with the availability of all the products that Dan talked about?
I do think there's some AI washing, Dan. We should talk about it in the ecosystem as well. I think investors are smart. So if you're going to say you're doing an AI thing, make sure you have a model behind it. It's not just a fun thing. Investors are very savvy with this stuff and are practitioners more often than not. If I was building a company today, I would use no code to get my first 10 or 100, depending if you're B2B or B2C customers. Literally, I would have no Git repository or anything. I would have myself, and that's it. With that, I taught myself Python. I would definitely not go through that hassle again. I would get to I would prove revenue very quickly, and then go raise a tidy fund from very agile investors who want numbers on the board. Then go build a proof of concept on that, and then go raise one round after that.
So the Janus benchmark is solo founder up to 100K. That's the new standard.
Yeah, because I don't want to waste, it's fun to work with a team, and that has its own benefits, but I don't want to waste my time, selfishly. I want to see, is this an interesting idea, or is this a business? Yeah, don't quit your day job. Made that mistake too. Happy to show you the war wounds. But don't quit your day job. Prove it on the side. Prove it in a couple hours. If you can't prove it in a couple hours or a couple weekends, that's actually a moment to pause, right? Again, unless you're building Amadeus all over again, don't.
Yeah.
You should be able to do it.
Yeah, being able to afford food when you're early on in a company is great. I agree with the don't quit your day job. Francois, what are your thoughts listening to this?
I'm just going to double down on this no-code thing because I wasn't really a big fan of it 2-3 years ago. I thought, no, this is too gimmicky. It's going to work for websites. It's going to work for very, very basic applications. And it kind of proved me wrong. Now it's moving more, I would say, in the dashboard side of things, where you can build really easily a dashboard for any company that you want, but you don't need a computer science background. You can just go in. I'll give you an example. Bubble. You can basically build like a Wix website, but it's a web app, and solve a specific problem. So one example in our space is owner management dashboards. Most of the property management systems for hotels, vacation rentals, or primarily vacation rentals, don't really report very well to the owners of those properties how much money they're making. They just deposit whatever they need to deposit. And so a few of our clients have come up with their startup idea, and they're like, I made an owner dashboard using Bubble. And I've had like 5 or 6 of these clients that are building this, and they're onto something. And they don't have zero engineering background whatsoever. So I think I double down on this whole no-code piece. And then, of course, AI. Everyone's using AI today on their website. I'm guilty of it as well. You kind of have to. If you don't, anyone who's bashing on it and says that it's like NFTs, it's just because you don't have the resources to actually deploy anything, or you're too far behind that it's too late and you need to start a whole new thing. But whether it's your engineering team, your marketing team, everyone in your team should be using different tools like that will help you scale faster.
So, summary so far, there are loads of problems in the travel space. A lot of them have to do with just an amazingly fragmented market, which creates a lot of cool opportunities. Also, from before, changing space, lots of cool stuff to do. General advice is stay super lean. Don't do any work for, say, the first year, 2 years that isn't directly related to the value proposition that you're providing to your customers. I think that's pretty good advice, but it is the same advice that any person would give to any startup founder. Last question, if someone's in here thinking like, wow, that's a cool problem, I think I could put something together to solve it, what is your, hold them by the lapels and scream in their face piece of advice you would give to them? Janice.
I realized this on my second startup, actually. You really have to love your customer a lot. And that sounds very trite, but you better love them. You better love their problems. You better love talking to them, because guess what? You're also customer success. Spoiler alert. For 3 years, probably 5 years. So you better love every part, because the problem you initially solve is 95% likely to move, but the customer is often not. And so you better love everything about them. And if you don't love them on day 1, you're definitely going to dislike them by day 100, by day 1,000. And so fall in love with that customer and really ask yourself, that's okay. But if you don't love every part of their life and the problem you seek to solve in their life, and are not curious about that and want to know more about them, the deeper you get, it's a losing battle.
Francois, what are you screaming into people's faces?
Focus, 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 focus. I mean, I definitely have ADHD. I get really distracted very quickly. I'm like, ooh, shiny object. I am that person. I'm pretty sure. So Janice ran due diligence on us 2 years ago through a UK investor, and I'm pretty sure what I pitched to you was like this. And what I do now is this. And in the eyes of our team, this is still this. But just focus on, the key metrics that matter on your ICP, who is exactly your customer. Start with one specific type, make sure there's a few of them, and then just repeat that. Don't go after everyone, because then you're going to do a bunch of everything not very well. So just focus, 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 focus.
Beautiful. All right, go forth and be fruitful, everyone. Thank you, Janice and Francois. That was fantastic.